Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable. Thank you so much for tuning in this day. My name is Huey, and I get to be your host today. Today, we are talking about faithfulness and fruitfulness in Asian American youth ministry. It's an important topic for us, not just for Asian American youth pastors and leaders, but all across the world, just people who are involved in youth ministry. And I am joined by two good friends, colleagues, and pastors who I believe know what they're talking about when it comes to faithfulness and fruitfulness in youth ministry, specifically in the Asian American context. These brothers have been through years of joys and struggles in Asian American youth ministry, and they're still going, which is a testament to God's grace and faithfulness in and through their lives. I'm so grateful for them. They have much to offer not only to the Asian American youth pastors and leaders, but to all those who are involved in youth ministry. So with that said, let me ask these friends to introduce themselves and also tell us briefly how you got started in youth ministry. So Justin, let me go to you first.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Justin. I'm in Houston, Texas. Worked in student ministry and family ministry for about 25 years, on staff for about 16. I'm currently in a season of free agency and moonlighting wherever the need is. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I get to see youth ministry and ministry from just a very interesting angle at the moment. And so was at Chinese Baptist Church in Houston, Texas for most of my life. And so how I got started in youth ministry, was that the question?
Yes.
All right. I think I was reluctantly brought in just either through a wager with the Lord or I think I was just handed over the youth ministry while I was in college it was my friend and I, and they're just like, hey, you look like you want to do this. Here you go. And so that was the original genesis back early on. And I think the Lord refined and clarified a lot of that in that process. So that was early on. Had no clue what we were doing, but the Lord redeemed it decades later.
That's awesome. Thanks, Justin. By the way, there are any churches that are right now looking for a youth pastor? My gosh, Justin just put out his resume there. How do you not contact Justin?
Snatch him up, guys. Snatch him up.
Yeah.
All right, Terrence.
Hey, everyone. I'm the family pastor at First Chinese Baptist Church of Walnut in Southern California. I'm in my 9th year, and I work with youth all the time. So in terms of my context right now, I collaborate with the youth pastor. There's a lot of things that we do together. I focus more on parents, but I'm very invested and also interested in what the students are doing. I have a few kids that are in that gap, and really thankful to be able to see how the church comes alongside as a spiritual family to disciple them. In terms of how I got involved in youth ministry, well, I mean, here's the thing, and I don't think it's a secret necessarily. Maybe it's just something that people didn't know about. I never got started in youth ministry. So when I sensed a call to ministry, I was already one of the lay leaders in college. And at that time, I was young, and I remember thinking, wow, this is a pretty good place to work because people could drive, and I don't need to get permission from any parents.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I mean, I enjoyed that season quite a bit, but as you continue to pastor and serve in a church, you are always going to be surrounded by students, and that's a blessing from the Lord. And so whether it's leading missions trips, whether it's serving our ministries together, I've never departed from working with students. And then now in my capacity, I work with students all the time. It's not that I do everything, but I definitely have a personal investment in how they grow and how their families are doing and how our spiritual family is welcoming them and integrating them. And so that's my story right there.
Yeah, Terrence, thanks so much, man. That's awesome. And just so that everybody knows, I think between the three of us, so I've been around youth ministry, Asian American contact youth ministries for, I would say, about 17, 18 years. So between the three of us being around youth ministry in some way, shape, or form, it's over 50 years. Like, and I'm not
That makes it sound so old.
Yeah. No, but I'm not saying that to kind of pat ourselves on the back, but like that's
No, not at all.
like God's grace, right? God's faithfulness to us and through us. And I know that three of us love love youth ministry and family ministry. So I think this is going to be a very, very important conversation, very necessary conversation. So Justin and Terrence, as you look back upon your time in youth ministry, family, being around youth students, um, why do you think you were able to last so long in youth ministry? And maybe any pivotal moments throughout your tenure that sustained your longevity? Let me go to Terrence first.
I mean, you know what, guys, I think I did know pretty early on that youth ministry or working with students is just not easy. It's one of those things, especially if maybe you're coming from a smaller church, and I've been pastoring at a Chinese heritage church. It's like if you're in the English congregation, it doesn't matter what your title is, you're doing youth ministry because all of the kids are with you. And a lot of times, the generations or the congregations that speak the other languages, they either don't feel like they're able, or they don't want to, or they don't feel like they have to work with students. And so from an early time, I realized that, working with students is important and is necessary, but it's not going to be easy because it has to be added on top of and juggled with everything else that we have to do. And so for me, it did begin with the sense of, well, am I called to pastor in this kind of setting? Because you could look for maybe greener pastors in the sense of like, okay, everything is, very organized in a sense of everyone being assigned to a role, and people work with students, people work with adults, and then maybe you don't have to deal with youth ministry. But in immigrant churches, it's pretty much accepted that you have to have a role in some way. So a sense of calling, I think, to my setting and to the type of church that I'm a part of and have continued to be, that was the beginning. It's where I recognized that I need to welcome and invite and also shepherd the students that come up, and that they're a blessing because they actually are the people that will become a part of the English congregation and become the next generation. We have the privilege of having a future that we're able to invest in. So that's the first part for me, is feeling a sense of call to my church.
Man, I think for me, in terms of longevity, it's the same thing. This was my home church. I mean, my dad pastored at this church, and so part of that shaping to get into this role was even just how my dad was training me without me understanding it. So like turning off the lights, cleaning up things.
Yeah.
Though those moments were like, okay, he's training you, but you don't know why he's like, it just seems like chores. And so those are the small parts of the calling. I think as we were getting in, it was hard, Terrence. Like, I don't know, like jumping in, it was just really hard because I think when you're a volunteer, I mean, you can get away with a lot, especially in the Chinese Heritage Church, right?
Yeah.
Teaching and whatever. But when you're the one who has to sign off on things and you have to be at those meetings, all of a sudden it gets difficult. And so, we formed a network of other youth ministers in our area, and so we made sure to meet at least once a month, and we did it for about 20 something years. So that for us was our lifeline, because we would come in early on. It was like, oh man, this is awesome, what kind of games are you playing, and we kind of collaborate. But years 4 to 7, it was, oh my gosh, I want to quit. And then someone was like, hey, no, we need you there. So it was a lot of that mutual edification. And so we needed other ministers who were in the grind, who was around the same phase, just to kind of be like, hold up, like we can do this.
Yeah.
And those were the lifelines, and those actually brought a lot of joy during that time to help us sustain. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So like both of you guys talked about, calling, that it is a calling, and it needs to be a calling, especially so that you can endure the hard moments, right?
Mhm.
And I know this wasn't a question that we talked about, but let's just be honest. In the years that you've been in ministry, how many times did you think about quitting?
Dude, okay. I had my resume on tap, right? Like just there. And half of it, okay, so if you're listening younger and you be ministry, this was my, I guess, pastoral counsel. Like on half of it, it's hard because ministry is just difficult, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pastoral ministry and it's very, very difficult. You're working with people, you're working with systems, you're working with heritage. That's on that. The other side is just something that's not even internal, it's external sometimes. So the difficulty is not even coming from you, it's coming from
Yeah.
people who have it out against you, certain, like, you're just gonna have bad days. And so, man, I'm like, for me, I think it's always been like that in my
Mm.
setting a lot of times, which, I mean, I know it's not like super glamorous, but I think that's the reality. I mean, what we did on the ground was awesome. But in terms of like, can I sustain this? There was many seasons where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. And this is where the gospel comes in.
Yeah.
And in those really hard days, you preach to yourself of why you got started in the first place.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that just constant reminder of
Yeah.
who you are in Christ.
Yeah. And Justin, I'm not gonna let you get away with just kind of generals, right?
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, because we gotta talk about this, and I think this is one of the ways I think we're gonna really be helpful to those that are
Sure.
gonna get into this topic is, for both of you. So what are those like specific, unique challenges to Asian American youth ministry context that might make it difficult for youth pastors and youth leaders to stay faithful and fruitful in their ministry. And let's try to be as specific and as helpful as we can here. Yeah. So Justin, let me just kind of probe a little bit. Like, so talk about that
Sure.
in specifics.
One of the big ones that really rocked my pastoral ministry world was when other pastors on staff were not just difficult to work with, they were questioning my calling as a pastor.
Wow.
Right. And multiple times I was like, hey, like, I know we disagree on a lot of these philosophical things and whatever, but can you at least recognize me as a brother in Christ, but also as a called, ordained minister in which we're part of the same staff? And for the life of me, like, I just couldn't understand why it was so difficult to gain that type of respect.
Wait,
I
is
think
that because they were
Yeah, that's hard.
I mean, it was it was a lot of stuff. It was probably cultural. And what I mean by that is like, overseas mentality versus, Asian American. Age could have been doing that. The resume probably like that probably plays into it. But, what was difficult really was, hey, am I not also called into this ministry just like you? So can I not earn the respect just as a fellow coworker? And to have somebody who's supposed to know better, supposed to like understand, not and just be antagonistic, man. That drains you, man. Like that drains you. And so it's tough. Like if and I will have to be honest, a lot of you guys probably might feel that way. We're working within an Asian American context too.
Mm.
Yeah. Thanks for
I hear you, man. I feel like, we are built in a second chair role, if not third chair, fourth chair. And sometimes maybe like what you described, there's not even a chair at the table. It's where you have ministry responsibilities, but maybe, you have a voice, but you don't have a vote. And I think that's kind of hard. And I'm not saying this to complain or point fingers. I just think that a lot of times that's the culture that some of us find ourselves in, or the dynamic that we find ourselves in the middle of in our church leadership hierarchy and everything else. It's not easy at all. I hear you.
Rooted Ministry is excited to partner with PNR Publishing to announce our newest book, Body Image, Valuing God's Good Gift by Andrea Lee, written specifically for young women. This book is part of the 31-day devotionals for teenagers series, which includes titles for both boys and girls. In our sin-torn world, even God's good gifts, like our bodies, come with major challenges. Whether teenage girls are struggling with shame, wrestling with questions about diet and exercise, or simply wondering what it means to live a God-honoring life in a female body, the Bible is filled with beautiful truth to help and encourage them. Andrea Lee writes as one who understands the pain of body image struggles. With warmth and transparency, she points young women to the deep hope of the gospel. 2-page devotional readings, accompanied by prayers and reflection questions, will help students appreciate God's amazing design for their bodies as part of His good creation.
And I think going back to a little bit more, I think a lot of it was they saw the title youth come before the title pastor, right? And I was like, hold on, like we're pastors, ministers first. and then the youth is just the demographic that we're responsible for. But we love the church, right? Like we are churchmen first, and we're church members first and foremost. And the pastoring is the privilege and the burden that we get to have. So let's find commonality at that table first, before we find our differences.
That's good, Justin. How about you, Terrence?
Well, I think everyone, wants the right thing and the good thing is that they want their churches to grow and be healthy. I can't think of anyone, whether it's, let's say, first generation or in like a senior role, that wants their church to like die or be sick or not be well or not reach people or, not baptize, not disciple. Like, I don't see that happening. No one aspires to that. But I think that's where it points to one of the ways in which in Asian American shoes, it's a little bit complicated because there are generational divides and cultural divides as to what that success looks like and the expectations for a pastor that works with a particular group of people. It's almost like, we're working with youth because maybe we're younger, and that comes with all of its trappings of being Asian. If you're younger, you're maybe less mature, you're less wise, and all those things. And some of that is true, right? There needs to be growing and maturation. But we're forgetting that working with youth is actually prime for not only sowing, but also reaping. Most people come to faith under the age of 18. So you actually want the best people in youth ministry. Like, if they can't evangelize and disciple, I don't want you working with the youth because I don't trust you. But if you are a good pastor, that's the person I want working with the youth. And sometimes maybe that, whether it's just historically or culturally, hasn't been seen that way with that type of importance and significance. And so it plays itself out then in terms of our expectations for the people in that role.
Yeah. Hey, so and just kind of related to this, and being around not just our youth ministry, but you guys have been around other youth ministries and youth pastors and youth leaders. Have you guys noticed any specific like signs that a church is actually valuing youth ministry? And if so, what would be like one like trend or sign that kind of points to like, oh, like this is kind of moving in the right direction where, and I'm not talking about just like elevating youth, pastors and youth leaders, but they have a vision for like the next generation. Like both of you guys were kind of saying that. What do you think are some healthy signs that a church is kind of navigating this well?
So I think to answer it off the bat, I think yes. I think we're starting to see that more and more, especially within the ethnic specific churches. I think early on, I think it was very far and few between. But I think it's starting to trend that way. And I see it especially with the Asian American church. If the upper leadership buys in, and they have to be willing to not lose the identity of the church and the direction, but also be open and willing to listen to the next generation. And again, when we talk about generation, I'm talking about sociologically, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, so on and so forth, but then also the generations of immigration, first gen immigrant, second gen immigrant, all these type of things, where you have upper leadership who's willing to talk and to think, to bring in the youth guy or the children's guy or next gen guy to come in to be like, hey, what am I missing? Like that spirit of humility is a great sign that the church has a shot. Churches that I've seen that will not have that in upper leadership, they're so kind of, hey, you do your thing, youth guy, you do your thing. I'm just like, hey, that's a recipe for disaster, because ultimately you're not shepherding your people, right? It's you're outsourcing a role or a responsibility, and so we've seen it. It's slow, but it's starting to show up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's more than just, again, letting the youth guy, have a voice, but also letting him have a vote, especially when he's making decisions as to ministry, like timelines and projects and so on and so forth. I mean, more recently, actually, just this past weekend, our youth pastor, who is here less than a year, so he's brand new. He's from the East Coast more recently, from the Midwest. So either way, there's not a lot of like cultural and also kind of regional affinity. He wanted to do something with the students that was pretty new for us. He wanted to have them do like a 30-hour fast, which growing up in our generation, that was the whole World Vision 30-hour famine thing, right? I mean, we did it. I loved it. It was very meaningful. But in our church, it's probably been a generation since anyone's done anything like that. And so when he proposed this idea, we could tell that, man, he's just burdened for this. He's like, I want to teach my students what it's like to rely on God, what it's like to grow a spiritual discipline, what it's like to spend time together in need, but then having that being satisfied and fulfilled by the Lord and one another. And so, I mean, when he proposed it, I was like, you know what? I think that's awesome. But then where we saw the alignment was that then the English pastor's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's find the facility, make this happen. And then a senior pastor signed off on it too. So then, even though as we were going into it and he was planning, on my part, it was like, hey, parents, don't worry. Your kids aren't going to die from this. Okay. We're going to provide them the best that we can. They're going to sleep here. They're going to eat this. They're going to, be able to be rationed in this way. They're going to prepare in this way. This is why we're doing it. And kind of really taking the time to persuade the parents. But then after that, then is watching just how the church came together to allow for something like this happen and to bless it too. And I haven't had the opportunity to get the full update from him yet because it just happened. But he was saying it was just such a rich experience for the students. And it was so new and so fresh. And, they were hungry for points, but then they really saw God work. They learned how to pray. And of course, then at the end, how did the parents bless? They brought a feast because everyone thought that the kids needed to eat a lot, right? And so it was a wonderful, wonderful memory. But if it was only about like, hey, did we trust the youth guy? Can our kids handle this? Is this good for the kids? And we just kind of cut him off at the knees. That is so discouraging. So that's just a small example, but it's kind of the idea of like, well, even through a ministry project, are we going to allow the new guy, the young guy, and I'll say this, the white guy to lead in our church? And, when he came up with this idea, we backed him up. And so little things like that really goes a long way to show that, hey, he's not just, the young person working with the youth, but he's one of our pastors and he has a heart and a vision and a burden to shepherd his people.
Yeah. See, but I think two things underneath that though, Terrence, and it's awesome that happened. But number one was you guys backed them up, right?
Yep.
I mean, you guys had the capital and the negotiating chips to be able to say, hey, we're backing this. And part of it is because not only you believe in the students, but you're like, hey, in this role, in this manner of ministering, we're gonna put in our chips behind this guy. That's where I think the longevity piece, guys, comes in. It's time-tested faithfulness allows you to have certain things. I think within the Asian American churches, that's a longer runway to have to buy in, right? It's just like, okay, 10 years and you're still doing ministry. Like that's when you go, okay, that guy he's not just randomly doing things and finding trends off the internet, but it's thought through. Second thing is, there's a sense where I think everyone is wanting to see whether we're thought through, we're like strategic in our ministry as well. Like we're serious about it, right? Because I think the danger is, well, look at that guy. He's, doing these crazy things and games with these kids and there's no thought process behind it. And so I think that's where student ministry ministers and pastors, that's where they have to own up. Right. We got to be the professionals in that sense of going like, we got to think through this. How would a parent understand this? Where's the logistics? Where's the safety? It's almost going, okay, how do I lay aside my immediate desires of what's cool and relevant for long-term ministry and strategy? So I think there's longevity and strategic planning that has to go part of this.
Yeah. I mean, jump off of what you said, though. I think that's where like our posture towards the youth pastor really helps. Like if we could recognize that's the youthfulness and the growing that he or she still needs to do, but we're still willing to back this person up, then we can actually coach this person to rise up to that. I think that actually is what comes with wisdom and experience in ministry, that you know how to explain and plan something better. You know how to, close all the loops so that everyone, is on the clear in terms of what's going to happen. That is actually what people grow into, that they're much better in their 30s and 40s in doing this than when they're in their 20s. But a lot of times I feel like how we discourage youth pastors is we almost judge them right there at that mirror, of, hey, man, at that, when you were 25 and you had this idea, I don't know if that was well thought out. I don't think it's a good one. So it's not happening. But in the big picture, that's really hard, for the young person to persevere and to try ideas and to try new things and to, strive for faithfulness. So I hear you on that for sure.
We are thrilled to announce Rooted's new book with New Growth Press, The Jesus I Wish I Knew in High School, Asian American Edition. Being a teenager is itself an overwhelming experience. But the struggles unique to Asian American teenagers can often lead them to wonder if anyone truly knows what they're going through. In this book, 12 authors come alongside Asian American students to share their own high school experiences, helping students to see how Jesus makes a difference in our unique struggles. Jesus sees them and knows them fully. These testimonies of growing up Asian American include struggles with belonging, performance pressure, fear of failure, living in an honor-shame culture, eating disorders, sexual assault, and adoption. The writers now walk faithfully with Jesus in their ethnic and cultural distinctions. These stories lift up the Asian American experience with dignity, offering representation and belonging. We hope you'll read this book and share it with the Asian American teenagers in your home or church.
Man, I love what you guys are saying. I feel like you guys are championing both Asian American youth ministries, and you're championing the Asian American youth workers and leaders. So I love what you guys are saying. And I just want to add one thought and then just kind of move on to our final kind of question. One thought is kind of related to what both of you guys are saying in terms of like, churches and senior leadership backing the youth worker, the youth leader, the youth pastor. I really feel like there's such a value to the senior pastor, the lead pastor, like really backing and championing the youth pastor and leader, right? But I don't mean that in a blind sense, like, just champion any person, but like kind of like what you were saying, Justin, get to know them, right? Like, don't just isolate them to you're the youth guy or the youth gal, but get to know them, give them feedback, love them, buy them a meal. And as you get to know them, I feel like your heart will grow for them and the heart that they have for youth ministry, so that championing them before like parents and before the church becomes easier and more natural. And I hope and pray, like, I know lead pastors are busy. Like every pastor is busy, but that's work that's gonna bear a lot of fruit, like you were saying, Terrence, right? Like this is about reaping, what you're sowing, So I think that's just kind of something that I've thought about as you guys were sharing. And again, I don't want this conversation to be kind of, like us pointing fingers at, the churches or the leadership. So, and I love what you said, Justin, like the youth workers and pastors, we need to kind of do our part. We need to, grow and try to be experts in our field. And so here's kind of the final question is, so all three of us would agree that there are benefits to longevity in youth ministry, not only for churches, but especially for youth ministries. But it actually has benefits to the youth leader and the youth pastor themselves. Like we benefit actually when we stay in the game for the long haul, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think are some benefits to staying to staying faithful for the long haul? And also, like, how do you think we as youth pastors and youth leaders, how can we stay fruitful in youth ministry for the long haul? How would you guys kind of answer that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that first. I think staying for the long haul, and again, it might not be easy to do so, but staying for a long haul really allows you to see how a youth grows in his or her ups and downs of life. I mean, we're talking about much more than just a straight line trajectory, because they're dealing with like physiological changes, they're dealing with emotional maturity, they're dealing with, spiritual understanding. I mean, when they're younger, their understanding and their application of the gospel, even if they proclaim to be Christians, is very different in depth and, in significance compared to when they're older as well, even as youth. So someone that's 11 in following Christ is very different than someone that's like 16 or 17 in following Christ. And so if you're able to stay longer in youth ministry, especially, and this might not be easy to do, especially if you're able to stay with the same group of students in youth ministry through the ups and downs, you'll actually then be able to see the Lord at work in more tangible ways. So that every bad conversation, every, conflict that comes up, every misunderstanding, that's not the end all of your ministry or your relationship with that person or that person's relationship with God. perseverance through the long run is actually how you're able to see God work as well as have your work bear fruit in time. Something that we share about, when we talk to our youth counselors, even to our parents, it's pretty much across the board, all the disciple makers, is that you're not going to see fruit for a while. And maybe that expectation is just how we need to think is if you expect to see fruit because of an amazing lesson or amazing talk or, coming up with like awesome questions, it doesn't happen that way because people's hearts aren't wired that way. It's not an equation. But if you stay around for the long run and you keep praying and pursuing and persevering with that person, then you'll see God work. So that in of itself, I feel like if we're after the reward at the end in some capacity, even though we may not get it, that's up to God in that way. It's worth it to stay around and to be in the lives of the students.
Yeah.
Amen.
I think a huge benefit of longevity in youth ministry is the fact that you get to shepherd and minister for the long haul, right? I mean, like, think about what we're called to do on a day in, day out basis, right? We get so close up to the souls of these people that no one else gets, right? And we get to partner with parents and families, but we get an inside track into the lives of these students who, may or not may understand at this moment, but we have that. So we get to shepherd. I'm like, and we get to be like Christ with these students for X amount of years. And the benefit is, again, watching them conform into the image of Christ, just like we are. I mean, I like what Terrence, you said was we become more sanctified as we do ministry every single day. And how do we know that we're growing is after you look back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you're like, oh my gosh, I did grow in these fruits, right? Of the Spirit. And so that's the best benefit. It's you get to minister to God's people. I mean, like what other benefit would you want? But if I can give you an anecdote, it's what you said, Terrence. Sometimes they're going to be an awesome student in their middle school, high school days, and they might drop out in college. And then you're just like, man, I'm such a failure. But then if you stick around faithful in ministry, you get to be the person on the back end of their 20 somethings and they get to come back. Like you don't see that if you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm out. Right. Like they're the ones who call you because why? Because they trusted your character and they trusted your content while you were there faithfully. So that if or when they dropped out and they left the faith, they go, oh, hold on. But that person back then, they knew me, they were real, and they never wavered on what they believed. And so I can trust them on this back end. And I'm just like, hey, that's a huge reward of walking them in life, in season, out of season, and then back into the same season. So, I mean, that's a massive benefit, man.
Yeah, man. The three of us, I do feel like, what Huey described earlier, our profiles. I mean, we've kind of lived long enough to start seeing some of these things happen again in the lives of people. Yeah. And then we as parents then too, we have students, we have kids that qualify as students in youth ministry. And I mean, what do we want for them as parents? It's in that sense, not that different, from what we want and hope for them as their spiritual family, to shepherd them, to guide them, to see them grow and to know and love Jesus, but to accept them and welcome them back when they fail, but to continue to point them to Christ. I mean, you just got to be there for the long haul, and it's so worth it to see how God works.
And as parents, what do we want for our youth workers and youth ministers? For them to stay. I'm like, I don't want someone to drop in like and leave every 7 months, right? And
turnover's the worst.
Well, yeah, and it's hard because I'm like, hey, for my own kids, I want that, right? Like that is not just it's a stability piece in a world of unstableness, right? And it's a consistency in a world that is constantly changing. And so I'm praying for my kids' youth ministers and youth leaders and workers to like, hey man, buy in and take those first 10 hits and still keep pushing because the message and the reward is that much better. You know what I mean?
I might get in trouble for saying this, but senior pastors and elders of churches, if you're listening, parents want youth pastors and leaders that are going to stay for the long haul. So please, get to know us, right? Okay. And we got to end, but just I want to be helpful, so all three of us are kind of in our 40s. Any practical tips for Asian American youth, workers, pastors, leaders on how to stay like relevant? I know relevance just it comes with a lot of baggage, but how do we stay relevant in youth ministry? And it goes to kind of so that we can bear fruit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any
Go-
practical things?
Go ahead, Terrence. You're the most relevant out of all of us.
I'm that's the nice way of saying I'm the oldest, bro. All right. So here's the thing. I think relevance, the way that it helps us to understand as pastors and practitioners, relevance is anchored in relationship. Relevance is not being primarily connected to the culture and being cool, because that's passing. Relevance is that regardless of what they're going through, regardless of what is trending, regardless of, what is like the happening thing, that when they come to church the next day, you're going to be there. Relevance is that you're going to be interested in their lives. Relevance is that you're going to be there when God is working in and through them. Relevance is you serving with them, walking with them, asking them how they're doing when there's no reason for you to care about them other than the fact that you love them in the Lord. That's relevance. And that's something that it takes a little while for youth to get and appreciate, because this is part of what we have to accept. We're not cool. But once we can accept that we're not cool, which means we're not necessarily, the people that they're attracted to first, or they need to tell everyone to first, or they need to, update first, or be near first. But ultimately, if you're around in relationship, you will be relevant because you're not going anywhere and you still love them. And so that's what I found. It's where a lot of times, I see that youth, maybe they don't know what to say to me, or, they don't, but ultimately they know that I'm around. They know that I care. And over time they open up and I see God work in and through those conversations and relationships.
Yeah, good word. I'm like, and ultimately that's just what influence really looks like, isn't it? I mean, we get to be the influencer that they don't know that they need, right? A lot of times. And so in terms of, I would say in terms of relevance, I'm like, look, it changes every 3 years now. That's what it felt like. And I think when you open the buffet of music and movies and everyone has their different genre now, it's impossible to keep up. Like, back then there's like 3 radio stations and you may have to listen to 3, but now it's impossible.
Dude, how old are you, man? Come on.
Dude, pre-Spotify.
It's funny. My youngest son goes, "Hey, were airplanes invented when you were little?" I'm like, "Dude, how do you think I got here?"
Napster, man.
Seriously.
So no, but like I think again, pastoral ministry. How do we stay relevant? Is we smell like the sheep, which means you become a student of the student, and so you're interested in what they're interested in. And I would say, hey, youth minister, youth pastor out there, figure out what your students they like, right? Don't assume that everyone's the same, but you got to do the work. Like you got to be right there with your sheep, and you got to know what everyone likes in order to meet them with the gospel at their little specific journey, right? And so, and it changes every single year. And so that's the beauty and the difficulty of ministering, because we need to know our sheep, but we get to smell like them as well. And so, I mean, and that always is the challenge, and it's the most fun thing ever, because every year is a different year, and you have new groups of kids, even if the kids are the same. And so, but they're on their own journeys and paths. And so this is why to sustain in ministry, you need to anchor yourself in the gospel, preach to yourself every day. And again, they can smell it, right? When you're faking it and you don't want to do it, it's probably because, we're probably not, we forgot our union, right? In a sense. And so, be that life source for them as well.
Yeah. I mean, we're never going to catch up with all the stuff that they know.
Yeah.
But if every single time you engage in your approach to youth, you're concerned about them, you're asking them how they're doing, you're asking sincerely to catch up with them because you care about them, over time, they'll know that. It's not just you're wanting an update from them or you're making small talk, but ultimately you care about them, and that matters.
Yep.
Well, you guys are awesome. In case I didn't mention in the beginning, friends, Justin is looking for a new call. I don't know what you're waiting for.
Shameless.
Huey gets a cut, man. Huey gets a cut.
Oh, finder's fee.
And Terrence, that relevance is relationship. That's That's gold right there. So, man, you guys are awesome. I appreciate you guys so much, and especially the faithfulness that you guys have displayed in Asian American youth ministry context. You guys are awesome. I feel like we could talk about this for hours, but we need to end. Thank you, Justin and Terrence, for your thoughts today, and thank you for listening today to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable. We're so glad that you could join us, and we look forward to the next time that we can chat. Till then, may the Lord bless and keep you as we trust in the death and resurrection of Christ to transform our homes and our churches. Follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at Rooted Ministry. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.